I'm Robert Lewis and I'm the Course Director of Creative Industries at Charles Sturt University.
And I'm Samantha Dowdswell and I'm Voice and Movement Lecturer here at Charles Sturt University.
We're going to demonstrate a couple of exercises that deal with connectivity of breath, voice, body, space and imagination. The first exercise that we're going to demonstrate is what I call Geology. It's about journeys, where you are, where you are going to and where you're coming from. The really important factor when dealing with monologues is structure of the text. You really need to adhere to the punctuation because a good playwright will use punctuation in the right areas. Punctuation signifies changes of thought. And for an actor to really kind of be mindful of punctuation is a very important thing, particularly for this exercise. Normally what we will do is, before you get into characterisation, character development and all those acting-based exercises, it's important to actually look at the foundations of actor training, which is voice, breath and body. And that's what we're going to do today. In a sense, it's the core, the foundation of a building from which you would build upon a characterisation and all those sorts of other very, very important things in actor training. Obviously, you'll have to have a monologue prepared. It doesn't matter if you have a classical monologue or a contemporary monologue, something that you've memorised that you could work with within these exercises. So, Sam, what have you memorised for today's workshop?
Well, I have actually memorised a piece of classic text. So it's Henrik Ibsen's A Doll's House. So it's Nora's, basically her monologue that she presents. It's where at the point in the play where she basically confronts her husband, who of 8 years in marriage, that she's basically going to be leaving him. So it's a pretty climactic moment in the play. And it's a really sort of well-known monologue. So I thought I would challenge myself with this because I find a tendency that myself when I was training, but a lot of young actors can sort of get into habitual sort of repetitive patterns. So I sort of wanted to challenge myself with a text that I knew really well and was really familiar with the character in order to find some new sort of areas of exploration.
Great, excellent. And every actor needs to do their homework. So before coming into the workshop like this, the actor needs to have a look at their text and mark out their punctuation and be really, really, really specific there. So commas, full stops, question marks, exclamation marks, ellipses, colons, semicolons, anything that structures and sort of breaks up the text. And some lines, and when I refer to a line, I don't mean an actual physical line on the actual page. A line is up to a punctuation point. And then you will see the structure of the text. I mean, some lines are long, some are short, some are just one word, and then you'll see the punctuation. So it's very important to mark up your text before you start any of these exercises. Now, for this particular exercise, actors are asked to find or source several key props, symbols, images that are key to the text itself. Like sometimes a character will talk about a particular prop in their monologue, and that's fine. You could source that. Or you might use your creativity and think of an abstract prop or a colour or a shape that can be used in the monologue. Something that's an object that is connected to the meaning and the feeling of the text itself. As I said, it could be literal, it could be abstract, it could be something like literally spelt out in the text, or it could be something imagined. So I've asked Sam to prepare several props for the monologue, and now Sam is going to explain the props that she's chosen for her piece.
So journey on back here with us. Okay, so starting over here, I've got this black shawl, which, again, I was sort of reflecting on what you were saying about it can be an abstract sort of object, or it can be something that's directly linked to the actual text itself. And I've sort of realised that a lot of mine are associated with sort of memories and character relationships. So this one, Nora's mother has actually is not present in the play at all, or was present in her life. She had passed away and was raised by her nanny. So I'd sort of imagined that this was something that belonged to her mother, this shawl that she sort of found as a child, and it was the last thing that, and her father had sort of removed all the objects and things in the house that reminded him of the mother. So she sort of kept this to herself and kept it in a little box in her room, and would sort of get it out and play with it and fantasize about what her mother would have been like. So that's one sort of important prop that I have there. Over here I've got this little sort of travel carry case. And there's something that struck me about this is the colour white, that it's quite light, it's quite dainty, but then it also is quite sort of dirty, and it looks a bit dated. So this might have been something that Torvald had sort of given me as a gift sort of earlier on in our relationship. So that's sort of my connection to Torvald, my husband. Then over here I have this sort of circular cushion, and it's sort of crocheted on the front. And I thought that this could have been Nora's. I've realised I've been interchangeably sort of saying me, the character, and Nora, which is interesting, rather than saying this is all Nora's stuff. Sometimes I'm saying, oh, well, this is mine. So this is a cushion that I would have made with the help of my nanny, because I'm not so handy all on my own. But I would have been incredibly proud of that, because I hadn't really been given many skills to do sort of work myself, because a lot of this artsy and craft work would have been done by the nanny. So, and then I've also got this sort of tattered bit at the back, and I thought that my cat would have gotten into this, but I've kept it and haven't thrown it away, because I was so proud the fact that this is something that I've sort of made from scratch myself. So there's the cushion. Then over here we've got a pair of shoes, and I quite liked the colour and the style of these, and I thought that this would have been sort of the very first gift that my husband Torvald would have gotten me, that perhaps I'd been walking along a street and I looked into the shop window and saw these, and he sort of said, oh, well, I'll go and get those for you. And then he went in and just purchased them, and sort of that idea that, just being able to be reciprocal to my needs and desires. So again, another connection to my husband, Nora's husband, Torvald. Then at the centre here, I've got this hat, which is representative of my father. And the texture is quite thick and quite woolly, and it sort of almost feels like a hug. And it makes me think that, he would have worn the same hat all the time. And this is quite a new hat. So it doesn't look like it's one of his older ones that's sort of dated and ratted and tattered. So I'm thinking that this would have been, his most recent hat of the exact same hat he always buys. And he didn't get to wear it that much because he'd sort of passed away not too long after he had purchased it. So it sort of represents my sort of distorted relationship with my father. So I've got that one there at the centre point.
Sure, it's very important to have the most significant prop in the centre. We're working in quite a limited space here, so it depends on the studio that you're working in, or the classroom, or the space that you are in. But you can have the objects scattered as far away as possible or close as possible. And I'll explain the actual the reasoning behind the spatial configuration of the props in a moment. So it's important to have the most significant prop or item in the centre, because you're always coming back to that prop. Your relationship to an object or a prop is extremely significant. An actor should never treat an object or a prop or a piece of furniture or a set piece like it's an addition or something that's been brought in. Every single thing in the performance space or in the workshop room is highly significant, otherwise it shouldn't be there. So with each prop, when you pick it up, when you touch it, essentially what it is an extension of your own body. It's not just picking it up and, throwing it around like it's an insignificant piece of material. It has a lot of significance and a lot of weight attached to it. So it's an extension of your body, an extension of your arms, your fingers, and it carries on. So it holds a whole lot of energy. Every single prop and every single a piece of material that you use and that you hold within the monologue or the play itself. So, as I said earlier, the aim of this exercise is where you are, where you have been, where you are, and where you're going to. But always having a connection to where you have been. So it's not like I'm leaving this spot and I'm moving and I've completely forgotten about where I've been. It's a connection between your past, your present, and your future all together. Having said all that whole physical, psychological theory behind it connects to the breath, thought, and structure of the text. This center point you'll treat as a Bowser to generate the energy to support your body on the incoming breath. So, for example, what's your first line in the piece, in the monologue?
We've been married for 8 years now.
We've been married for 8 years now. Now, there's a specific length for that line. You have to take in enough breath for that line. If you take a short breath, then you'll run out of breath. Then you run out of energy, voice, and breath. But if you take in a whole lot of breath, too much for that line, you'll end up wasting the breath. So you finish the line, and you've got this excess energy at the end. So really think economically about connecting breath, thought, and voice all together. Always coming to the center point. When you touch that center point, you breathe in enough breath for that line. So that first line is, again?
We've been married for 8 years now.
Take enough breath, think the line as you inhale. Sometimes you can actually mouth the breath as you inhale. We've been married for 8 years now. And that helps the muscularity kind of connect with the breath. And it depends on what you want to do at that particular moment. Breathe in enough air. That line again, we've been married for 8 years now. Breathe in. And then move to a item when you say that line. We've been married for 8 years now, and make contact with the object on the very last syllable, consonant, vowel of that line. Not before, not after, because every actor needs to know themselves in time and space. There's no point in using more energy than needed or less energy than needed. It has to be very, very specific, knowing yourself in time and space. And this is what this exercise it demonstrates. And then when you're ready to drop in the thought for the next line, which is?
Don't you realise this is the first time?
Okay, you inhale that thought. Touch the center point. Don't you realise that this is the first time? And then touch the next item, and so on and so forth. On the inhalation, it's important to reconnect to the center point, and on the exhalation and the vocalization, move over to the next significant object. You can go as detailed as finding an item or prop or object for each specific line. Then you'll have a whole space full of objects. Or you can find a limited amount of props that are significant for the whole text itself. But anyway, that's the premise of this exercise, and we'll let Sam demonstrate that. See how you go. Take your time. But it's about economics of breath, thought, voice, and action.
We've been married for 8 years now. Don't you realise this is the first time that we two man and wife have ever had a serious conversation together? For 8 whole years now. No longer than that. Ever since we first met. We've never exchanged a serious word on any serious subject. I'm not talking about worries. What I'm saying is we've never just sat down in earnest together to get to the bottom of a single thing. You've never understood me, Torvald. I've been dreadfully wronged, first by Papa and then by you. You've never loved me, Torvald. You've only found it pleasant to be in love with me. When I lived at home with Papa, he used to tell me his opinion about everything. And so I had to share the same opinion.
Good. Okay, we'll leave it there. And you can continue on for the entirety of the monologue. So how did that feel, Sam? Any sort of ideas, thoughts?
I caught
comments?
myself at one moment where I was drawn back to the centre and my thought came out rather than inhaling the thought. So I sort of spoke the line of text. And I think initially I was sort of having the tendency to overthink it and go, oh, okay, I'm inhaling, I'm exhaling, moving to object, but still being connected to centre point, which is a pivotal object. But then once you started to get into a rhythm, inhale, exhale, moving from line to line, then you sort of started to connect to the rhythm of the breath.
Absolutely.
Within the lines?
Yep. And I think what this exercise does is actually put the brakes on a little bit and make you think, well, hang on, no, I'm going too far ahead of myself, too far ahead to the next thought, the thought after that. Take your time, pull back, take it moment by moment. And the other thing which I find interesting, watching you do the exercise and others as well, is that it makes you also focus on the gap between the lines. And the gap between the lines of the breath. It's the inhalation, it's the inspiration for the thought for the next line. So when you say your first line, there is a gap, there is a break, there is a life in between that first line and second line and third line and fourth line, and that is the breath. So we often think about running to the next thought, to the next thought, to the next thought, which is fine for, you know, keeping the story and the drama moving along. But what's happening in between those lines? You know, saying your first line and then an inspiration, a breath in, and then the next line itself. So this highlights that journey between lines, which is the energy within the breath, the space between. I mean, obviously in performance, you will not do this kind of laborious work. This is just an exercise to actually focus on slowing it down, breaking it down, and working on it thought by thought, breath by breath. But I find this exercise also good in terms of to help memorise lines as well. There are countless methods in memorising text, dialogue and lines, but this is one of them. Breaking it down, thought by thought, the line, the breath, the action. And
I just thought as well, when you were saying that, it's actually a really incredibly useful tool to help remember blocking as well. So, you know, if you're being told to go over to the desk to grab an item, to then move and sit over on a chair, and then to stand up and to move against the wall, you can break down the lines of the text in relation to the blocking, so that the blocking feels a lot more intuitive and matches the rhythm of the breath.
Yep, and be creative with this exercise. I mean, it doesn't have to have this sort of format. You can actually move it to a theatre space or a set and use the actual set itself. It allows the actor to then connect to the architecture and the environment itself. So use this as a framework and then use your creativity on how you can actually extend it.